When I first moved into the old house, my parents were thrilled. They spoke of its character, its charm, and how it would be the perfect place for our family to grow. But as I stood in my new narrow bedroom, a feeling settled over me, a weight, pressing, heavy and cold, that I could not shake off. The room barely fit my twin bed and a small dresser. Sunlight barely reached the farthest corners, and shadows clung to the walls like secrets. At night, as stillness crept into the house, I began to hear things. Subtle sounds at first, like the rustling of sheets, the faintest whisper of a breath that seemed to come from nowhere, only to dissolve into the silence. I could hear the creaking of the old wooden house, and at times I could swear it breathed with me. Each evening, as I tucked myself into bed beneath my soft, warm blankets, I would glance over at the bottom bunk. I had chosen not to sleep there. The upper bunk felt safer, more enclosed. It was a choice that perhaps made little sense to grown-ups, but to me, it was life or death. The bottom bunk felt like a cave, dark and inviting, but full of unknown terrors. There were nights when I could hear the distant rustling in the darkness underneath, like something was shifting, someone was moving, almost like a whisper from the depths of the shadows. What was it? I never dared to find out. I would close my eyes tightly, willing myself to sleep, but the noises grew louder, and soon I was caught between wakefulness and nightmares. My heart raced as I lay paralyzed beneath the covers. Everything felt wrong. I remember the first time I saw it, the entity. It emerged from the wall, thin and gaunt, its emaciated body making the already narrow room feel smaller. Its skin was pale and bruised, stretched tightly over protruding bones. The smell, it was a foul, decaying odor that invaded my senses, making me want to gag. I could hardly breathe as its hollowed eyes fixed upon me, the eyes of a predatory creature that felt all too familiar. I blinked, and it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, slipping back into the darkness like a wisp of smoke. I remember that I had a stack of children's horror books on my nightstand, a collection of delightful tales meant to thrill and frighten. They were nothing like this, nothing like what I encountered each night in my bedroom. Once upon a time, those stories had elicited giggles and gasps of excitement. Now they felt like the very essence of my nightmares, the ink in which my fears were written. Every night the fear grew, and with it a strange compulsion to confront the entity, to understand what it was, why it haunted me. I found myself drifting into a half-dream state, my mind conjuring images of it prowling around my room, lurking behind the armchair, peering from beneath the dresser. I would wake in a cold sweat, heart pounding, breathless and lost in a waking paralysis, frozen, unable to scream or move. Weeks turned into months, and the entity became emboldened, its visits more frequent. It began to touch me. I could feel its bony fingers wrap around my ankle, the chill of its skin sending an electric shock through my body. It was during one of those encounters that I sensed the dread shift into a physical manifestation. I couldn't separate reality from imagination anymore, each night blending into the next until sleep became a cruel joke. As I grew older, those nightmares clung to me, twisting and warping into remnants of my childhood. I carried them into adolescence, where the shadows of my past began to haunt my waking moments. My parents would often scold me for my childish fears, for not wanting to sleep alone. They gifted me cozy bedding sets to ease my anxiety, yet dismissed the restless nights I spent writhing in terror. They never understood. They didn't hear the sounds or smell the decay. In my adult years, the memories of that narrow room remained etched in my mind like an unhealed scar. I sought remedies for my fears, anxiety relief products, sleep tracking devices, anything to help me cope with the lingering sense of dread that shadowed my days. Yet nothing could quiet the whispers from the past. It was only when I decided to confront the entity head-on that my life took a turn towards the unthinkable. I returned to that old house, now dilapidated and crumbling, but the memories had not faded. The bottom bunk was still there, still dark, still waiting. I stood at the foot of the bed, my heart racing, recalling the nights I had spent frozen in fear. I knew I had to face it, to finally understand the terror that had haunted me for years. As I crouched down, adrenaline pulsing through my veins, I caught a glimpse of its ghastly form emerging from the shadows. The entity was all bones and rotten flesh, a tainted mass of what once may have been human. It reached for me with its skeletal hands, and I felt the chill of death wash over me. Yet this time I didn't freeze, I reached back. In that moment, something shifted, a change in the atmosphere that sent ripples through the very fabric of reality. I could see its true form, not simply a monster born of my fears, but a reflection of my own traumas. It was then that I realized I could not destroy it. It was a part of me. With a surge of strength I never knew I possessed, I embraced the darkness, the pain that had been festering for years. I understood that fear does not vanish through violence. It needs compassion. I focused on the warmth of the memories I held dear, the love of my family, the joy of friendships, the stories that once filled my imagination with wonder. I began to chant, calling forth the light within my soul, pouring it into the entity before me. As the warmth enveloped us both, I felt the room shake. Flames erupted, devouring the shadows, consuming the entity, until all that remained was a soft whisper, a sigh of surrender. I watched, tears streaming down my face, as the darkness burned away, leaving only the light. In that instant, I was freed from the chains of my childhood fear. But the scars remained. The entity was gone, but in its place lived a power, a reminder that my fears do not define me. And while the old house may have burned in the flames of that confrontation, the memory of my childhood would forever linger, intertwining with the essence of who I had become.